Okay. Don't sue me, Michael Crichton, even though you're dead. Don't sue me from beyond the grave. Okay. So, I'm in a need. I need Jurassic Park in my life. I was gonna make a video. Okay. I was gonna make a video of me playing my most favorite game ever, Jurassic Park Builder. Then I found out it's dead. It's straight up dead. I won. Then the only thing left is Jurassic World Builder, but I don't like that. Jurassic Park Builder is better. So I'm just gonna read the Michael Crichton Jurassic Park book from like 200 years ago, and this is for like 40-year-olds. So I've read this in real life. So maybe you're watching this because you're too poor to afford the books you're watching. Maybe you can't read. So you can't read the book because you're poor. I got you. I'm ready to throw up. That's how detailed this is. Get your trash bag. Get your toilet ready. If you feel like you're gonna have diarrhea, get ready.
I thought you said for the poor people. Some poor people can't afford.
Get your cardboard boxes.
What if they can't afford one?
Okay. Prologue: The Bite of the Raptor. I'm only gonna read a little bit of it. No, I'm gonna read it all the way I can until my memory runs out. The tropical rain fell and drenching. I can't talk or read that good, so haha, I can read good. Okay. Drenching sheets hammering the corrugated roof of the clinic building, roaring down the metal gutters, splashing on the ground in a torrent. Roberta Carter sighed and stared out the window from the clinic. I haven't read this book in over a year, almost 2 years now, so she could hardly see the beach or the ocean beyond, cloaked in a low fog. This wasn't what she had expected when she had come to the fishing village of Bahia Anasco. I don't get paid to translate. On the west coast of Costa Rica, to spend 2 months as a visiting physician. Bobby Carter had expected sun and relaxation after 2 grueling years of residency in emergency medicine at Michael Reese's Pieces in Chicago. She had been in Bahia Anasco now for 3 weeks, and it had rained every day. Oh, almost like when we were in New Hampshire. Everything else was fine. She liked the isolation of Bahia Anasco. I don't care if I'm saying it wrong. It's right there, you can read it. And the friendliness of its people. Costa Rica had one of the 20 best medical systems in the world, and even in this remote coastal village, the clinic was well maintained, amply supplied. Her paramedic, Manuel Aragon, was intelligent and well trained. Bobby was able to practice a level of medicine equal to what she had practiced in Chicago, but the rain, the constant unending rain. Across the examining room, I can't read. Manuel cocked his head. "Listen," he said. "Believe me, I hear it," Bobby said. "No, listen." And then she caught it. Another sound blended with the rain. A deeper rumble that built and emerged until it was clear. The rhythmic thumping of a helicopter, she thought. They can't be flying in weather like this. But the sound built steadily. And then the helicopter burst low through the ocean fog and roared overhead. Circles, then came back. She saw the helicopter swing back over the water, near the fishing boats, then ease sideways to the rickety wooden dock, and back toward the beach. It was looking for a place to land. It was a big-bellied Sikorsky with a blue stripe on the side, with the words InGen Construction. That was the name of the construction company building a new resort on one of the offshore islands. The resort was said to be spectacular and very complicated. Many of the local people were employed in the construction, which had been going on for more than 2 years. Bobby could imagine it, one of those huge American resorts with swimming pools and tennis court, where guests could play and drink their daiquiris without having any contact with the real life of the country. Bobby wondered what was so urgent on the island that the helicopter would fly in this weather. Through the windshield, she saw the pilot exhale in relief as the helicopter settled onto the wet sand of the beach. Uniformed men jumped out and flung open the big side door. She heard frantic shouts in Spanish, and Manuel nudged her. They were calling for the doctor. Two black crewmen carried a limp body toward her, while a white man barked orders. The white man had a yellow slicker, red hair appeared around the edges of his Mets baseball cap. Is there a doctor here? He called to her as she ran up. I'm Dr. Carter, she said. I'm out of breath for some reason. The rain fell in heavy drops, pounding her head and shoulders. The red-haired man frowned at her. She was wearing cut-off jeans and a tank top. She had a stethoscope over her shoulder. The bell already rusted from the salt air. Ed Regis, we got a very sick man here, doctor. And you better take him to San Jose, she said. San Jose was the capital just 20 minutes away by the air. We would, but we can't get over the mountains in this weather. You have to treat him here. Bobby trotted alongside the injured man as they carried him to the clinic. He was a kid, no older than 18. Lifting away the blood-soaked shirt, she saw a big slashing rip along his shoulder. Another on the leg. What happened to him? Construction accident. Ed shouted. He fell. One of the backhoes ran over him. The kid was pale, shivering, unconscious. Manuel stood by the bright green door of the clinic, waving his arm. The men brought the body through and set it on the table in the center of the room. Manuel started an intravenous line, and Bobby swung the light over the kid and bent to examine the wounds. Immediately, she could see that it did not look good. The kid would almost certainly die. A big tearing laceration ran from his shoulder down his torso. At the edge of the wound, the flesh was shredded. At the center, the shoulder was dislocated, pale bones exposed. Ugh. A second slash cut through the heavy muscles of the thigh, deep enough to reveal the pulse of the femoral artery below. Her first impression was that his leg had been ripped open. Tell me again about his injury, she said. Oh, I feel like I'm going to throw up now. I didn't see it, Ed said. They say the backhoe dragged him. Yeah, I feel like I'm going to throw up. When I first read this, I was in school, so I just stopped reading. It was about... I can't talk now. It was before lunch, and I didn't eat anything. Because it almost looks as if he was mauled, Bobby Carter said, probing the wound. Like most emergency room physicians, she could remember in detail patients she had seen even years before. She had seen two maulings. One was a 2-year-old child who had been attacked by a Rottweiler dog. The other was a drunken circus attendant who had had an encounter with a Bengal tiger. Both injuries were similar. There was a characteristic look to an animal attack. Mauled? Ed said. No, it was a backhoe. Believe me, Ed licked his lips as he spoke. He was edgy, acting as if he had done something wrong. Bobby wondered why. If they were using inexperienced local workmen on the resort construction, they must have accidents all the time. Manuel said, Do you want lavage? Yes, she said, after you block him. She bent lower, probed the wound with her fingertips. If an earth mover had rolled over him, dirt would be forced deep into the wound. But there wasn't any dirt, just a slippery, slimy foam. And the wound had a strange odor, kind of rotten stench. The smell of death and decay. She never smelled anything like it before. How long ago did this happen? An hour? Then she noticed how tense Ed Regis was. He was one of those eager, nervous types, and he didn't look like a construction foreman. More like an executive. He was obviously out of his depth. Bobby Carter turned back to the injuries. Somehow she didn't think she was seeing mechanical trauma. It just didn't look right. No soil contamination on the wound site, and no crush injury component. Mechanical trauma of any sort, an auto injury, a factory accident, almost always had some component of crushing, but here there was none. Instead, the man's skin was shredded, ripped across his shoulder, and again across his thigh. It really did look like a maul. On the other hand, most of the body was unmarked, which was unusual for an animal attack. She looked again at the head, the arms, the hands. The hands. She felt a chill when she looked at the kid's hands. There were short, slashing cuts on both palms and bruises on the wrists and forearms. She had worked in Chicago long enough to know what that meant. "All right," she said. "Wait outside." "Why?" Ed said, alarmed. He didn't like that. "Do you want me to help him or not?" she said, and pushed him out the door and closed it on his face. She didn't know what was going on, but she didn't like it. Manuel hesitated. "I continued to wash." "Yes," she said. She reached for her little Olympus point and shoot. She took several snapshots of the injury, shifting her light for a better view. Little Olympus is a camera, by the way. It really did look like bites, she thought. Then the kid groaned, and she put her camera aside. I'm trying to find a comfortable position on the floor, and bent toward him. His lips moved, his tongue thick raptor. He said, "Velociraptor." At those words, Manuel froze, stepped back in horror. "What does that mean?" Bobby said. Manuel shook his head. "I do not know, doctor." "Velociraptor no es español." No. It sounded to her like Spanish. "Then please continue to wash him." "No, doctor." He wrinkled his nose. "Bad smell." And he crossed himself. I don't know what that means. Bobby looked again at the slippery foam stretched across the wound. She touched it, rubbing it between her fingers. It seemed almost like saliva. The injured boy's lips moved. "Raptor," he whispered. In a tone of horror, Manuel said, "It bit him." "What bit him?" "Raptor." "What's a raptor?" "It means hupia." Bobby frowned. The Costa Ricans were not especially superstitious, but she had heard the hupia mentioned in the village before. They were said to be night ghosts, faceless vampires who kidnapped small children. According to the belief, the hupia had once lived in the mountains of Costa Rica, but now inhabited the islands offshore. Manuel was backing away, murmuring and crossing himself. "It is not normal, this smell," he said. "It is the hupia." Bobby was about to order him back to work when the injured youth opened his eyes and sat straight up on the table. Manuel shrieked in terror. The injured boy moaned and twisted his head, looking left and right, with wide, staring eyes, and then he explosively vomited blood. Ew. He went immediately into convulsions, his body vibrating, and Bobby grabbed for him, but he shuddered off the table onto the concrete floor. He vomited again. Ugh. Makes my head hurt. There was blood everywhere. Ed opened the door saying, "What the heck happening?" And when he saw the blood, he turned away, his hand to his mouth. Bobby was grabbing for a stick to put in the boy's clenched jaws, but even as she did it, she knew it was hopeless, and with a final spastic jerk, he relaxed and lay still. She bent to reform, mouth to mouth, but Manuel grabbed her shoulder, fiercely pulling her back. "No," he said, "the hupia will cross over." I don't know why I'm saying it in a Spanish accent. "Manuel, for God's sake, no," he stared at her fiercely. "No, you do not understand these things." Bobby looked at the body on the ground and realized that it didn't matter. There was no possibility of resuscitating him.
What's your YouTube channel called?
I'll tell you later.
No, right now. Right now.
I'll tell you later.
No, right now.
Okay. Okay.
No, tell me.
Okay, there you go.
Thanks.
That. Okay. Sorry about that. Manuel called for the men, who came back into the room and took the body away. Ed appeared, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand, muttering, "I'm sure you did all you could." Then she watched as the men took the body away, back to the helicopter, and it lifted thunderously up into the sky. "It is better," Manuel said. Bobby was thinking about the boy's hands. They had been covered with cuts and bruises, and the characteristic pattern of defense wounds. She was quite sure he had not died in a construction accident. He had been attacked, and he had held up his hands against his attacker. "Where is the island they come from?" she asked. "In the ocean, perhaps 120 miles offshore." I'm out of breath. I'm not good at reading out loud. I only read in my head, but I'm gonna try. Where was I? "Pretty far for a resort," she said. Manuel watched the helicopter. "Hope they never come back." Well, she thought at least she had pictures. But when she turned back to the table, she saw that her camera was gone. The rain finally stopped later that night. Alone in the bedroom behind the clinic, Bobby thumbed through her tattered paperback Spanish dictionary. The boy had said raptor, and despite Manuel's protests, she suspected it was a Spanish word. Sure enough, she found it in her dictionary. It meant ravisher or abductor. That gave her pause. The sense of the word was suspiciously close to the meaning of hoopia. Of course, she did not believe in the superstition, and no ghost had cut those hands. What had the boy been trying to tell her? From the next room, she heard groans. One of the village women was in the first stage of labor, and Elena Morales, the local midwife, was attending her. Bobby went into the clinic room and gestured to Elena to step outside for a moment. "Elena, see, doctor? Do you know what is a raptor?" Elena was gray-haired and 60, a strong woman with a practical, no-nonsense air. In the night, beneath the stars, she frowned and said, "Raptor? Yes, you know this word?" "See," Elena nodded. "It means a person who comes back in the night and takes away a child." "A kidnapper?" "Yes." "A hoopia?" Her whole manner changed. "Do not say this word, doctor." "Why not?" "Do not speak of hoopia now," Elena said firmly, nodding her head toward the groans of the laboring woman. "It is not wise to say this word now." "But does raptor bite and cut his victims?" "Bite and cut?" Elena said, puzzled. "No, doctor, nothing like this. A raptor is a man who takes a new baby." She seemed irritated by the conversation, impatient to end it. Lena started back toward the clinic. I will call to you when she is ready, doctor. I think 1 hour more, perhaps 2. Bobby looked at the stars and listened to the peaceful lapping of the surf at the shore. In the darkness, she saw the shadows of the fishing boats anchored offshore. The whole scene was quiet, so normal. She felt foolish to be talking of vampires and kidnapped babies. Bobby went back to her room, remembering again that Manuel had insisted it was not a Spanish word. Out of curiosity, she looked in the little English dictionary, and to her surprise, she found the word there too, raptor, derived of el raptor, plunderer, for a raptus, bird of prey. That's velociraptor, bird of prey. First iteration. At the earliest drawings of the fractal curve, few clues to the underlying mathematical structure will be seen. Ian Malcolm. Almost paradise. Mike Bowman whistled cheerfully as he drove the Land Rover through the Cabo Blanco Biological Reserve on the west coast of Costa Rica. It was a beautiful morning in July, and the road before him was spectacular, hugging the edge of a cliff overlooking the jungle and the blue Pacific. According to the guidebooks, Cabo Blanco was unspoiled wilderness, almost a paradise. Seeing it now made Bowman feel as if the vacation was back on track.
Man, I need your help.
Wow, 20 minutes already. Okay, I had to pause the recording for a second. I feel like I was going to throw up. hugging the edge of a cliff overlooking the jungle and the blue Pacific. According to the guidebooks, Cabo Blanco was unspoiled wilderness, almost a paradise. Okay. Seeing it now made Bowman feel as if the vacation was back on track. Bowman, a 36-year-old real estate developer from Dallas, had come to Costa Rica with his wife and daughter for a 2-week holiday. The trip had actually... Okay, I almost paused it. The trip had actually been his wife's idea. For weeks, Ellen had filled his ear about the wonderful national parks of Costa Rica and how good it would be for Tina to see them. I don't know why I was reading like that. Then, when they arrived, it turned... Then, when they arrived, it turned out Ellen had an appointment to see a plastic surgeon in San Jose. That was the first Mike Bowman had heard about the excellent and inexpensive plastic surgery available in Costa Rica, and all the luxurious private clinics in San Jose. Of course, they'd had a huge fight. Mike felt she'd lied to him, and she had, and he put his foot down about this plastic surgery business. Anyway, it was ridiculous. Ellen was only 30 and she was a beautiful woman. Heck, she had been homecoming queen her senior year at Rice, and that was not even 10 years earlier. But Ellen tended to be insecure and worried, and it seemed as if in recent years she had mostly worried about losing her looks. That and everything else. The Land Rover bounced in a pothole, splashing mud. Seated beside him, Ellen said, "Mike, are you sure this is the right road? We haven't seen any other people for hours. There was another car 15 minutes ago." He reminded her. "Remember the blue one? Going the other way." "Darling, you wanted a deserted beach," he said, "and that's what you're going to get." Ellen shook her head doubtfully. "I hope you're right." "Yeah, Dad, I hope you're right," said Christina from the back seat. She was 8 years old. "Trust me, I'm right." He drove in silence a moment. "It's beautiful, isn't it? Look at that view. It's beautiful." "It's okay," Tina said. Ellen got out a compact and looked at herself in the mirror. Pressing under her eyes, she sighed and put the compact away. The road began to descend, and Mike Bowman concentrated on driving. Suddenly, a small black shape flashed across the road, and Tina shrieked, "Look, look!" Then it was gone to a jungle. "What was it?" Ellen asked. "A monkey? Maybe a squirrel." "Monkey," Bowman said. "Can I count it?" Tina said, taking her pencil out. She was keeping a list of all the animals she had seen on her trip as a project for school. I don't know, Mike said doubtfully. Tina consulted pictures in the guidebook. "I don't think it was a squirrel monkey," she said. "I think it was just another howler." They had seen several howler monkeys already on their trip. "Hey," she said more brightly. "According to his guidebook, the beaches of Cabo Blanco are frequented by a variety of wildlife, including howler and white-faced monkeys, three-toed sloths, and coatimundus. You think we'll see a three-toed sloth, Dad? I bet we do." "Really?" "Just look in the mirror." "Very funny, Dad." The road sloped downward through the jungle toward the ocean. Mike Bowman felt like a hero when they finally reached the beach. A 2-mile crescent of white sand, utterly deserted. He parked the Land Rover in the shade of the palm trees that fringed the beach and got out the box lunches. Ellen changed into her bathing suit, saying, "Honestly, I don't know how I'm going to get this weight off. You look great, hon." Actually, he felt that she was too thin, but he had learned not to mention that. Tina was already running down the beach. "Don't forget, you need your sunscreen," Ellen called. Later, I'm gonna throw up, but I'm gonna do it anyway. It's worth the one view I get. Later, Tina shouted over her shoulder, "I'm going to see if there's a sloth." Ellen Bowman looked around at the beach and the trees. "You think she's all right?" "Honey, there's nobody here for miles," Mike said. "What about snakes?" "Oh, for God's sake," Mike Bowman said. "There's no snakes on a beach." "Well, there might be." "Honey," he said firmly, "snakes are cold-blooded. They're reptiles. They can't control their body temperature. It's 90 degrees on that sand. If a snake come out, it'd be cooked. Believe me, there's no snakes on the beach." He watched his daughter scampering down the beach. A dark spot on the white sand let her go. "Let her have a good time." He put his arm around his wife's waist. Tina ran until she was exhausted, and then she threw herself down on the sand and gleefully rolled to the water's edge. The ocean was warm, and there was hardly any surf at all. She sat for a while, catching her breath, and then she looked back toward her parents and the car. To see how far she had come, her mother waved, beckoning her to return. Tina waved back cheerfully, pretending she didn't understand. Tina didn't want to put sunscreen on, and she didn't want to go back and hear her mother talk about losing weight. She wanted to stay right here and maybe see a sloth. Tina had seen a sloth 2 days earlier at the zoo in San Jose. It looked like a Muppets character, and it seemed harmless. In any case, it couldn't move fast, and she could easily outrun it. Now her mother was calling to her, and Tina decided to move out of the sun, back from the water to the shade of the palm trees. In this part of the beach, the palm trees overhung a gnarled tangle of mangrove roots which blocked any attempt to penetrate inland. Tina sat in the sand and kicked the dried mangrove trees. She noticed many birds' tracks in the sand. Costa Rica was famous for its birds. The guidebook said there were 3 times as many birds in Costa Rica as in all of America and Canada. Wow. Well, I mean, there's not that many birds where I am. Maybe like 5 kinds. In the sand, some of the 3-toed birds' tracks are small and so faint that they could hardly be seen. Other tracks were large and cut deeper in the sand. Tina was looking idly at the tracks when she heard a chirping, followed by a rustling in the mangrove thicket. I don't know what that is. Did sloths make a chirping sound? Tina didn't think so, but she wasn't sure. Chirping was probably some ocean bird. She waited quietly, not moving. Hearing the rustling again, and finally she saw the source of the sounds. A few yards away, a lizard emerged from the mangrove roots and peered at her. Tina held her breath. A new mammal for her list. The lizard stood up on its hind legs, balancing on its thick tail, and stared at her. Standing like that, it was almost a foot tall, dark green with brown stripes along its back. Its tiny front legs ended in little lizard fingers that wiggled in the air. The lizard cocked its head back as it looked at her. Tina thought it was cute, sort of like a big salamander. She raised her hand and wiggled her fingers back. The lizard wasn't frightened. It came toward her, walking upright on its hind legs. It was hardly bigger than a chicken, and like a chicken, it bobbed its head as it walked. Tina thought it would make a wonderful pet. She noticed that the lizard left 3-toed tracks that looked exactly like bird tracks. The lizard came closer to Tina. She kept her body still, not wanting to frighten the little animal. She was amazed that it would come so close, but she remembered that this was a national park. All the animals in the park would know that they were protected. This lizard was probably tame. Maybe it even expected her to give it food. Unfortunately, she didn't have any. Slowly, Tina extended her hand palm open to show she didn't have any food. The lizard paused, cocked its head, and chirped. "Sorry," Tina said. "I just don't have anything." Then, without warning, the lizard jumped onto her outstretched hand. She could feel its little toes pinching the skin of her palm, and she felt the surprising weight of the body's animal pressing her arm down. Oh, I went twice. Then the lizard scrambled up her arm toward her face. I just wish I could see her, Alan Bowman said, squinting in the sunlight. That's all, just see her. I think this is the part in the Lost World opening. Yeah, okay. I'm sure she's fine, Mike said, picking through the box lunch packed by the hotel. There was unappetizing grilled chicken and some kind of meat-filled pastry. Not that Ellen would eat any of it. You don't think she'd leave the beach, Ellen said. No, hon, I don't. I feel so isolated here, Ellen said. I thought that's what you wanted, Mike Bowman said. I did. Well, then what's the problem? I just wish I could see her is all, Ellen said. Then, from downward the beach, carried by the wind, they heard their daughter's voice. She was screaming. Puntari. I give up. I think she's quite comfortable now, Dr. Cruz said, lowering the plastic flap of the oxygen tent around Tina as she slept. Mike Bowman sat beside the bed, close to his daughter. Mike thought Dr. Cruz was probably pretty capable. He spoke excellent English, the result of training at medical centers in London and Baltimore. Dr. Cruz? Dr. Cruz. I had to get a Kool-Aid because I was thirsty. Dr. Cruz radiated competence in the Clinica Santa Maria, the modern hospital, and Punta Arenas, spotless and efficient. But even so, Mike Bowman felt nervous. There was no getting around the fact that his only daughter would drink my Kool-Aid. If I'm actually editing this video, I bet I'll do a Minecraft slurp sound. Keep drinking it. Okay. Hey, it's really hot where I am. I turned off the AC because I didn't want to... Okay. Desperately ill. And they were far from home. When Mike had first reached Tina, she was screaming hysterically. Her whole left arm was bloody, covered with a profusion of small bites, each the size of a thumbprint, and there were flecks of sticky foam on her arm, like a foamy saliva. I don't know if you're aware of this, but it's the Compsognathus or Compy, or whatever you call it, little green dinosaur in the Lost World. He carried her back down the beach. Almost immediately, her arm began to redden and swell. Mike went... Okay, I'm going to skip because I feel sick. Just skip all of this until the... I'm just going to skip. Okay. Beach... Blah, 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 blah. I'm just going to skip until the Dr. Grant part, or the actual part, New York. There we go. Dr. Richard Stone, head of the... I have limited memory, okay? I'm not going to waste it on stuff that I don't like to read. It's kind of boring. Dr. Richard Stone, head of the Tropical Diseases Laboratory of Columbia University Medical Center, often remarked that the name conjured up a grander place than it actually was. I almost sipped my Kool-Aid. In the early 20th century, when the laboratory occupied the entire fourth floor of the biomedical research building, crews of technicians worked to eliminate the scourges of yellow fever. I'm gonna drink my Kool-Aid again. Malaria and cholera. Chernobyl. But medical successes in research laboratories in Nairobi, and Sao Paulo, sorry if these make you mad that I'm reading them wrong, had left the TDL a much less important place than it once was. A fraction of its former size, it employed only 2 full-time technicians, and they're primarily concerned with diagnosing illness of New Yorkers who had traveled abroad. The lab's comfortable routine was unprepared for what it received that morning. "Oh, very nice," the technician in the tropical diseases laboratory said. I read that fast, I know. And she read the customs label. "Partially masticated fragment of unidentified Costa Rican lizard." She wrinkled her nose. "This one's all yours, Dr. Stone." Richard Stone crossed the lab to inspect the new arrival. "Is this the material from Ed Simpson? Homer Simpson's lab?" "Yes," she said, "but I don't know why they'd send a lizard to us." His secretary called. Stone said, "Homer Simpson's on a field trip in Borneo for summer, and because there's a question of communicable disease with this lizard, she asked our lab to..." Okay. Skip. Oh, that's... okay. Skip. Shape of the data. Later she was a calmer Elena. Okay, I'm just gonna skip a lot of this, okay? I'm not gonna read the whole thing. What do you expect? This took me a month to read normally. Second iteration. With subsequent drawings of the fractal curve, sudden changes may appear. I don't know what that's square. It's Minecraft. Wow, I need a dictionary for the. Ian Malcolm. That's a guy in the movie. In this book. Shore of the inland sea. Alan Grant. Okay, this is the part I want to read. Crouched down, his nose inches from the ground. I'm gonna sip my Kool-Aid. Okay, my Kool-Aid is done. I have one of those Kool-Aid bursts. I like drinking them. Okay. Temperature was over 100 degrees. His knees ached despite the rug layers pads he wore. His lungs burned from the harsh alkaline dust dripped off his forehead onto the ground, but Grant was oblivious to the discomfort. His entire attention was focused on the 6-inch square of earth in front of him. Working patiently with a dental pick and an artist's camel brush, he exposed a tiny L-shaped fragment of jawbone. It was only an inch long, no thicker than his little finger. The teeth were a row of small points and had the characteristic medial angling. Bits of bone flaked away as he dug. Grant paused for a moment to paint the bone with rubber cement before continuing to expose it. There was no question that this was the jawbone from an infant carnivorous dinosaur. Its owner had died 79 million years ago, at the age of about 2 months. If you don't know what that means the dinosaur who the jawbone belonged to died 79 million years ago at the age of about 2 months. With any luck, Grant might find the rest of the skeleton as well. If so, it would be the first complete skeleton of a baby carnivore. "Hey, Alan!" I don't know why I said it like that. "Hey, Alan." Alan Grant looked up, blinking in the sunlight. He pulled down his sunglasses and wiped his forehead with the back of his arm. He was crouched on an eroded hillside in the Badlands outside Snakewater, Montana. Beneath the great blue bowl sky, blunted hills exposed outcroppings of crumbling limestone stretched for miles in every direction. There was not a tree or a bush, nothing but barren rock, hot sun, and whining wind. Visitors found the Badlands depressingly bleak, but when Grant looked at this landscape, he saw something else entirely. This barren land was what reminded of another very different world, which had vanished 80 million years ago. In the mind's eye, Grant saw himself back in the warm, swampy bayou that formed the shoreline of a great inland sea. The inland sea was 1,000 miles wide, extending all the way from the newly upthrust Rocky Mountains to the sharp, craggy peaks of the Appalachians. All of the American West was underwater at that time. There were thin clouds in the sky overhead, darkened by the smoke of nearby volcanoes. The atmosphere was denser, richer carbon dioxide. Plants grew rapidly along the shoreline. There were no fish in these waters, but there were clams and snails. But pterosaurs swooped down to scoop algae from the surface. A few carnivorous dinosaurs prowled the swampy shores of the lake. Moving among the palm trees and offshore was a small island, about 2 acres in size. Ringed with dense vegetation, this island formed a protected sanctuary where herds of herbivorous duck-billed dinosaurs laid their eggs in communist nests. Obviously, that's not what it says. I'm trying to be funny. Raise their squeaking young. Over the millions of years that followed, the pale green alkaline lake grew shallower, finally vanished. The exposed land buckled and cracked under the heat, and the offshore island with the dinosaur eggs became the eroded hillside in northern Montana, which Alan Grant was now excavating. I am all out of breath. I haven't been out of this breath since we did the running thing in 5th grade. I threw up water that day. It was pretty weird. Okay. Hey, Alan. He stood, a barrel-chested, bearded man of 40. I don't know what that means. He heard the chugging. Yeah, a lot of this you won't know what it means because this book is for really old people. Like, it's for adults. I read this when I was, 11? I'm 13 now. I think I was, I was 11. I was 11 when I read this first. Yeah, 11. That's a number. Okay. He heard the chugging of the portable generator and the distant clatter of the jackhammer cutting into the dense rock on the next hill. He saw the kids working around the jackhammer, removing away the big pieces of rock after checking them for fossils. At the foot of the hill, he saw the sixth T-word of his camp, the flapping mess tent, and the trailer that served as their field laboratory. And he saw, I'm going to start reading slower because I think I'm reading too fast. And he saw Ellie waving to him. From the shadow of the field laboratory, "Visitor!" she called and pointed to the east. Grant saw the cloud of dust and the blue Ford sedan bouncing over the rutted road toward them. He glanced at his watch, right on time, precisely on schedule. On the other hill, the kids looked up with interest. They didn't get many visitors in Snake Water, and there had been a lot of speculation about what a lawyer from the Environmental Protection Agency would want to see Alan Grant about. Grant knew that paleontology, the study of extinct life, had in recent years taken on an unexpected relevance to the modern world. The modern world is changing fast, and urgent questions about the weather, deforestation, global warming, or the ozone layer often seemed answerable, at least in part with information from the past, information that paleontologists could provide. He had been called as an expert witness twice in the past few years. Grant started down the hill to meet the car. "Hello, car." "Hello, Lightning McQueen." The visitor coughed in the white dust as he slammed the car door. "Bob Morris, EPA," he said, extending his hand. "I'm with the San Francisco office." Grant introduced himself and said, "You look hot. Want a beer?" Platterpluck. Yeah. Platterpluck is Jesus exposed. Confirmed. I don't know. Morris was in his late 20s, wearing a tie and pants from a business suit. He carried a briefcase. His wing-tip shoes crunched on the rocks as they walked toward the trailer. "When I first came over the hill, I thought this was an Indian reservation," Morris said, pointing to the tipis. Teepees, like the weird, not weird. It's like a tent thing, but it's like a triangle. I'm still gonna call them typists. "No," Grant said, "just the best way to live out here." Grant explained that in 1978, the first year of the excavations, they had come out in North Slope octahedral tents, the most advanced available, but the tents always blew over in the wind. They tried other kinds of tents with the same result. Finally, they started putting up teepees, which were larger inside, more comfortable, and more stable in the wind. These are Blackfoot teepees built around 4 poles," Grant said. "Sioux teepee." That's Sioux. I think. Sioux. That's Sue. Sue teepees, yes, I learned that from watching The Flash. Heck yeah. It's only a waste of your time if it doesn't help you with anything. Sioux teepees are built around 3, but this used to be a Blackfoot territory, so we thought, Moore said, very fitting. He squinted at the desolate landscape and shook his head. How long have you been out here? About 60 cases, Grant said. Morse looked surprised. He explained, we measure time in beer. Okay, we start in June with 100 cases. We've gone through about 60 so far. That doesn't sound so bad, but I don't know. 63 to be exact, Ellie Sattler said. As they reached the trailer, Grant was amused to see Morris gapping. Gap clothing store. I don't even know if you can hear me right now. I don't even know if you can hear me. Gap store. At her, Ellie was wearing cutoff jeans and a work shirt tied at her midriff. She was 24 and darkly tanned. Her blonde hair was pulled back. Ellie keeps us going, Grant said, introducing her. She's very good at what she does. What does she do? Morris asked. Paleobotany, Ellie said, and I also do standard field preps. She opened the door and went inside. The air conditioning in the trailer only brought the temperature down 85 degrees, but it seemed cool. 85 degrees isn't that bad. I mean, I'm fine in like 90-degree weather. I'm fine in warm weather, or even hot weather. One time it was 100 degrees, I thought it was like 80. Okay, back to the book. But it seemed cool. After the midday heat, the trailer had a series of long wooden tables with tiny bone specimens neatly laid out, tagged and labeled. Farther along were ceramic dishes and crocks. There was a strong odor of vinegar. Morse glanced at the bones. I thought dinosaurs were big, he said. They were, Ellie said, but everything you see here comes from babies. Snake water is important primarily because of the numbers of dinosaur nesting sites here. Until we started this work, there was hardly any infant dinosaurs known. Only one nest has ever been found in the Gobi Desert. We've discovered a dozen different hard hadrosaur. I like that dinosaur. That's like the duck one. Like the duck bill. I don't know why I'm telling you this. You probably don't even care. No one's probably watching at this point. They probably watch like 5 seconds of it and leave. Oh, we're at 46 minutes now. Who's gonna waste 46 minutes of their life watching this? Probably me. I'd probably be that kind of person. Okay. Gonna say something. Only one has blah 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 blah. Complete with eggs and bones of infants. While Grant went to the refrigerator, she showed Morris the acetic acid baths, which were used to dissolve away the limestone from the delicate bones. They look like chicken bones, Morris said, peering into the ceramic dishes. Yeah, she said, they're very bird-like. And what about those? Morris said, pointing through the trailer window to piles of large bones outside wrapped in heavy plastic. Rejects, Ellie said. Bones too fragmentary when we took them out of the ground. In the old days, we just discard them, but nowadays we send them for genetic testing. Genetic testing? Moore said. Here you go, Grant said, thrusting a beer into his hand. He gave another to Ellie. She chugged hers, throwing her long neck back. Morris stared. We're pretty informant here, Grant said. Want to step into my office? Sure, Morris said. Grant led him to the end of the trailer, where there was a torn couch, a sagging chair, and a battered end table. Grant dropped onto the couch, which creaked and exhaled a cloud of chalky dust. He leaned back, thumping his boots on the end table, gestured for Morris to sit in the chair. Make yourself comfortable. Grant was a professor of paleontology at the University of Denver. Oh, I went there, actually. When I went to a trip to Colorado, we went to it was like a science show. It was at the University of Denver. I go to Denver like twice in my life. And one of the foremost, why am I talking about this? It's a book. Researchers in this field, but we had never been comfortable with social niceties. N-word. He saw himself as an outdoor man, and he knew that all the important work in paleontology was done outdoors with your hands. Grant had little patience for the academics, for the museum curators, and what he called teacup dinosaur hunters, and he took some pains to distance himself in dress and behavior from the teacup dinosaur hunters, even delivering his lectures in jeans and sneakers. Grant watched as Morris primarily brushed off the seat of the chair before he sat down. Morris opened his briefcase, rummaged around through his papers, and glanced back at Ellie, who was lifting bones with tweezers from the acid bath at the other end of the trailer, paying no attention to them. You're probably wondering why I'm here. Grant nodded. It's a long way to come, Mr. Morris. Well, Morris said, to get right to the point, the EPA is concerned about the activities of the Hammond Foundation. We received some funding from them. $30,000 a year, Grant said, nodding, for the last 5 years. What do you know about the foundation? Morris said. Grant shrugged. The Hammond Foundation is a respected source of academic grants. They fund research all over the world, including several dinosaur researchers. I know they support Bob Carey out of the Tyrrell in Alberta, and John Weller in Alaska. Probably more. Do you know why the... trying to lay down on the floor, but it's uncomfortable. I don't have long... My charger isn't long enough. Okay. No one cares. Do you know why the Hammond Foundation supports so much dinosaur research? Morris asked. Of course. It's because old John Hammond is a dinosaur nut. Have you ever met Hammond? Grant shrugged. Once or twice. He comes here for brief visits. He's quite elderly, and eccentric. The way rich people sometimes are, but always very enthusiastic. Why? Well, Morris said, the Hammond Foundation is actually a rather mysterious organization. He pulled out a Xeroxed X-word world map marked with red dots and passed it to Grant. These are the digs the Foundation financed last year. Notice anything odd about them? Oops. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Montana, Alaska, Canada. That's not a word. Canada. Sweden. They're all sites in the north. There's nothing below the 45th parallel. Morris pulled out more maps. It's the same year after year. Dinosaur projects to the south in Utah or Colorado or Mexico. Never get funded. The Hammond Foundation only supports cold weather digs. We'd like to know why. Grant shuffled through the maps quickly. If it was true that the foundation only supported cold weather digs, then it was strange behavior because some of the best dinosaur researchers were looking in hot climates and there are other puzzles, Morris said. For example, what is the relationship of dinosaurs to amber? Amber. Yes, it's the hard yellow resin of dried tree sap. I know what it is, Grant said, but why are you asking? Because, Morris said, over the last 5 years, Hammond has purchased enormous quantities of amber in America, Europe, and Asia, including many pieces of museum-quality jewelry. The Foundation has spent $17 million on amber. They now possess the largest privately held stock of this material in the world. I don't get it, Grant said. Neither does anybody else, Morris said. As far as we can tell, it doesn't make any sense at all. Amber is easily synthesized, has no commercial or defense value. There's no reason to stockpile it, but Hammond has done just that over many years. Amber, Grant said, shaking his head. And what about his island in Costa Rica? Morris continued. 10 years ago, the Hammond Foundation leased an island from the government of Costa Rica, supposedly to set up a biological reserve. I don't know anything about that, Grant said, frowning. I haven't been able to find out much, Morris said. The island is 100 miles off the west coast. It's very rugged, and it's in an area of ocean. The combination of the wind and current make it almost perpetually covered in fog. They used to call it Cloud Island. Isla Nublar, apparently. The Costa Ricans were amazed that anyone would want it. Morris searched in his briefcase. The reason I mention it, he said, is that according to the records, you were paid a consultant's fee in connection with this island. I was, Grant said.
How long have you been reading?
53 minutes and 3 seconds.
Wow.
Morris passed a sheet of paper to Grant. It was the Xerox of a check issued in March 1984 from InGen Inc., Farallon Road, Palo Alto, California, made out to Alan Grant in the amount of $12,000. At the lower corner, the check was marked Consultant Services Costa Rica Juvenile Hyperspace. Oh, sure, Grant said. I remember that. It was weird as heck, but I remember it, and it didn't have anything to do with an island. Alan Grant had found the first clutch of dinosaur eggs in Montana in 1979, many more in the next 2 years. But he hadn't gotten around to publishing his findings until 1983. His paper, with its report of a herd of 10,000 duck-billed dinosaurs living along the shore of a vast inland sea, building communal nests. I keep getting notifications. I don't know if you can see them. I don't know if you can see them, but I keep getting YouTube notifications. I'm going to turn those off. Eggs in the mud, raising their infant dinosaurs in the herd, made Grant a celebrity overnight. The notion of maternal instincts and giant dinosaurs and the drawings of cute babies poking their snouts out of the eggs had appeal. Around the world, Grant was besieged with requests for interviews, lectures, books. Characteristically, he turned them all down, wanting only to continue his excavations. But it was during those frantic days of the mid-1980s that he was approached by the InGen Corporation with a request for consulting services. Have you heard of InGen before? Morse asked. No. How did they contact you? Telephone call. It was a man named Gennaro or Giannino, something like that. Morris nodded. Donald Gennaro, he said. He's the legal counsel for InGen. Anyway, he wanted to know about the eating habits of the dinosaurs, and he offered me a fee to draw up a paper for him. Brant drank his beer, set the can on the floor. Gennaro was particularly interested in young dinosaurs, infants, and juveniles. What they ate. I guess he thought I would know about that. Did you? Not really, no. I told him that we had found lots of skeletal material, but we had very little dietary data. But Gennaro said he knew we hadn't published everything, and he wanted whatever we had. And he had offered a very large fee, $50,000. Morris took out a tape recorder and sat on an end table. You mind? No, go ahead. So Gennaro telephoned you in 1984. What happened then? Well, Grant said, you see, our operation here, 50,000 would support 2 full summers of digging. I told him I'd do what I could. So he agreed to prepare a paper for him? Yes. On the dietary habits of juvenile dinosaurs? Yes. You met Gennaro? No, just on the phone. Did Gennaro say why he wanted this information? Yes, Grant said. He was planning a museum for children, and he wanted to feature baby dinosaurs. He said he was hiring a number of academic consultants and named them. There were paleontologists like me and a mathematician from Texas named Ian Malcolm, and a couple of ecologists. It's a word. Systems analysis. Good group, Morris nodded, making notes. So, you accepted the consultancy? Yes, I agreed to send them a summary of our work. What we knew about the habits of the duck-billed hadrosaurs we found. What kind of information did he send? Morris asked. Everything. Nesting, behavior, territorial ranges, feeding behavior, social behavior, everything. How did Gennaro respond? He kept calling and calling, sometimes in the middle of the night. Why would the dinosaurs eat this? Would they eat that? Should the exhibit include this? I could never understand why he was so worked up. I mean, I think dinosaurs are important too, but not that important. They've been dead 65 million years. You think his calls could wait until morning? I see, Morris said. The $50,000? Grant shook his head. I got tired of Gennaro and called the whole thing off. We settled up for $12,000. That must have been about the middle of 1985. Morris made a note. And InGen? Any other contact with them? Not since 1985. And when did the Hammond Foundation begin to fund your research? I'd have to look, Grant said, but it was around then, mid-80s. And you know Hammond as just a... Oh, okay. Well, I guess that's it. I didn't buy it. I will buy it in the next video. Okay. Goodbye.